Welcome to the Fleet News Group podcast. In this episode, we're joined by Louise Azzopardi, a life coach, mentor, keynote speaker, and industry ambassador. Louise started her career as a heavy vehicle apprentice with Cummins South Pacific, and then went on to make history as the first female to win gold in the Australian National Heavy Vehicle Competition. And she later represented Australia on the international stage with the Skillaroos. Today, she's sharing her journey and insights on staff attraction, retention, training new starters, and why diversity in workshops matters more than ever. If you're a fleet manager running a workshop, this conversation is packed with advice you can put into practice. But before we get started, don't forget you can stay up to date with all things fleet via our websites, our quarterly magazine, this podcast, and LinkedIn as well. You can follow us on LinkedIn and sign up to our weekly newsletter. That's enough of the spiel from me. Louise, welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on, Mark.
So we've met a couple of times at different events around the country, and I'm always amazed at the reception you get from the industry because you've been doing this a while now. It was like in my notes here, I've got at 15 you started the journey as a heavy vehicle mechanic.
Mhm.
Like what sort of encouraged you to take that leap at such a
Yeah.
young age and get into a traditionally male-dominated field?
Yeah. Well, one of the first contributing factors is I decided very on that school was not for me and I wanted out ASAP. So that was one of the motivations.
Yeah.
To then go particularly into heavy vehicle, I grew up on a farm working with my dad. We grow tomatoes in greenhouses,
Oh
so
wow.
always like picking, packing, but then also fixing and repairing machinery. And we used to ride and race dirt bikes around the farm, and used to actually like race at a club. And I really, really enjoyed that. I enjoyed the tinkering. I enjoyed knowing how things worked. At that point in time, I mostly was a torch holder for my dad, but you still pick up stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, so when I got to the point where I was in year 9, entering year 10, I was like, cool, I don't want to do year 11 and 12. I want out of here as soon as I can. That's when I decided that I wanted to be a mechanic. I started doing work experience and I hadn't quite secured a job. So I was still looking. So I did work experience in all of my school holidays, was still looking towards the end of the year. And I went to a careers expo. And at that careers expo, I had 3 conversations that were really impactful. I had one conversation, which was short and sharp. Me and my dad went up to the stand and they were like, we wouldn't want our daughters working here. We wouldn't recommend it for you. So, turned away from that one pretty quickly. I later found out that male apprentices had actually been sexually harassed at that workshop.
Oh my
So,
God.
like, it was kind of sad to know that they knew that, and it was still happening. But anyway, me and my dad went to another stand at the expo, and this guy lectured me and my dad for about 10 minutes how I couldn't be a motorcycle mechanic. That's particularly what I wanted at that point in time.
Yeah.
Apparently, I was too small to push the bikes around, which meant that I wouldn't be able to fix them. So this went on for like 10 minutes. This guy was like super passionate about convincing me and my dad that I shouldn't do it. And after that, I was like so disheartened. But my parents were like, "Come on, let's keep walking through the expo. We still got a few more like lines to do, but let's
Mm.
keep going." And I was like, "Fine." So we kept walking through, and that's when I met Sarah. So Sarah at the time was a first year heavy vehicle mechanic. She was the same height as me and the same build as me. At the time, we were both blonde. Um, but her existence literally disproved everything that guy had been telling me and my dad. Like, she was doing it. Like, the size didn't matter, the strength didn't matter. The strength comes with time for anyone, male and female, when getting
Mm.
into the industry like that. So I did work experience at her work, which was Cummins South Pacific, and I loved it. I applied for the job. I ended up getting that position there. I started there in 2012. Like I said, when I was 15 years old. So yeah, straight out of high school into that apprenticeship. And it was a mixed experience, but mostly it was a positive experience, which then led me into the World Skills competition, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
which was I wouldn't change it for the world.
Yeah, it's interesting you say there about not wanting to do 11 and 12 because there seems to be so much pressure these days. And, I think people who are running workshops and hiring are probably they're probably blinkered in that there's lots of kids like you were, and to be honest, like I was 16 when I left school to become a mechanic as well. It wasn't for me, but I think we've done all right between, like I'm a bit
Yeah.
older than you, but I think it's worked out all right.
That's it. And I think one thing, like people say, oh, don't leave school so early. You won't be able to get into uni if you change your mind. But
Mm,
that's not true. Like you can get into uni as a mature age student at 22. And if you leave school, like at that, for in Australia and New South Wales, at the year 10 point, where you're usually
mm,
about 15 and 16,
yeah.
you can already have like a career. Like by the
Mm.
time between 15 and 22, that's 7 years. That's with the change of jobs now that people have, like 7 years is like a whole solid career where you get money behind you, life skills behind you, you contribute to an industry that you're passionate about. And if you so want to go to uni after that, you can. The door is not closed because you didn't go to year 11 and 12.
This is meant to be about you, but I feel like you're talking about my career because that's exactly what I did. I finished the apprenticeship and then went to uni. But one of the questions I was going to ask about how can workshop owners and businesses inspire more young people to get into maintenance or mechanics as a career? And it sounds like what you said, you not talk them out of it by the sound.
Yeah.
It's that
Just
simple.
give them a crack. Like work experience is something that I recommend to businesses and people looking for getting a job, especially women looking at entering the kind of more masculine industries like fleet, like road transport. um, we come up against unconscious bias, and even as a young person there is that bias there to, oh, you're young, you're not interested. But work experience works for both sides. Work experience works for the student or the person looking at getting a job. You get to see if the work is for you. You get to prove that you can rock up on time, that you're polite, that you can learn, whether you do a week or a few weekends. And then to the employer, like it's better than a resume and an interview. If someone is with you 8 hours a day for 5 days, it's a bit harder to fake that than it is to get ChatGPT to write your resume.
Yeah. Yeah, and I suppose the great thing about the transport industry, that the worlds that we sort of play in, that a lot of them on Saturdays and even Sundays, the businesses are operating. So you can turn up on a Saturday and wash some trucks, or
Yeah.
start helping out in the workshop and get that
So
experience,
many
can't you?
kids do that, especially the ones that are we're talking more in the maintenance side. If they're interested in cars and bikes and stuff like that, they might already be racing go-karts or racing motorbikes or building a project car at home. They're looking for some extra cash. And
Mm.
generally those kids are pretty keen to do something within that realm, like washing trucks, to get some extra cash for that.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so you sort of almost got talked out of it, but you found someone to look up to and aspire to, and that brought you into it. But
Mhm.
then you went on and kind of showed that size and gender doesn't matter, and you went on and won the gold medal in the heavy vehicle competition in the skills. So, how did that feel? And were there any barriers as a female, sort of through that process?
Yeah, through that process itself, there wasn't any barriers, but I was treated differently. When I got to that international stage, so going up to nationals, like everything was awesome. Way that I mean like treated differently, I did tend to get interviewed more than the other competitors, being female in a non-traditional trade. And there was another girl that was a spray painter and she was competing, so she got interviewed a bit more because of being in that non-traditional area. So that come up. And then same with the internationals. I had even other people noticing it because on the international stage, similar to the national stage, it's open to the public. People can come in. It's kind of usually combined with a careers expo. Schools can walk through. But I had one guy, he was one of the judges from Germany at the international competition. He's like, I've never seen someone be photographed as much as you have been photographed like for this. And I was just doing my thing. I was the only girl there. And that way I was treated differently. But there wasn't any barriers in that competition itself. In
Mm.
my job, like when I won national world skills, I had just left a company because I had been bullied previously. Between from getting bullied, I was in part of an ethics investigation. Um, I was young. I made some decisions that weren't the best decisions. People decided to take that and run with it with some bullying in there. Um, so I had that experience, kind of running alongside the experience of going through the world skills competition.
Yeah,
So it was
wow.
almost like I was leading two lives. Um, but it taught me so much. It When I look back on it, I don't think, knowing what I do now, I probably would have made different decisions and done different things, but
Like all of us.
like all of us, but 15, 16, 17-year-old Louise thought she was doing the best she could,
Yeah,
and making the right decisions, but
yeah,
yeah, with
yeah.
the world
So,
skills competition, nothing really blocked me. Um, but yeah, there was a few comments said through my time being a mechanic. Like I had people tell me that I shouldn't be there because I was a girl. People saying they wouldn't let their wives or their daughters do this. People telling me that it was a funny looking kitchen. Um,
well,
some
let's
stuff
move on.
was
Let's move on from that a bit, because I suppose the things you're talking about, and the decisions that you made as a 16-year-old, and I probably made very similar ones. That, like, how do people manage apprentices? What advice do you give for employers? Because that still goes on today. There's still
still goes on today. The
16-year-olds.
teenage brain is the teenage brain,
Yeah. So you must
and I
see it
think
all
that
the
kind of
time.
Yeah, and that kind of goes up to, like, being 25 as well, that kinda young stage, but, giving opportunities to learn, creating a shame-free environment, especially in an apprenticeship where, even if you're starting an apprenticeship as a mature age person, an apprenticeship is pretty much 4 years of making mistakes, and that's how you learn. You get some knowledge, or even some people set you up to kind of fail as a learning experience, as well, which can be useful, but should be done in moderation and very carefully. Um, but being able to create a shame-free environment where people can openly and honestly talk about the mistakes they've made, so then they can be in a place where they can reflect. Okay, cool. You stuffed that up. That filter leaked. You put this part on wrong and it broke. Okay, cool. What are you going to do next time? Is there anyone you can ask? How do you know if you're putting it on right? And just creating an environment where it's okay to talk about when things go wrong. Um, that way, then people can learn from it.
Mm. So, like, you're now doing that as you're working in TAFE, you're training young people. Um, is it the support that they need? It's I suppose it's not just the technical support; it's that emotional support as well. Is that another? So, like, how do workshops have they adapted? Have they changed since you first joined?
Yeah. I don't know. Some workshops, like with workshops and just in businesses in general, I feel like every business is like its own little island. With there, and then all those businesses have teams inside of them, and all those team leaders themselves create their own little workplace culture. Some larger companies, like I was at Cummins South Pacific, they had a dedicated person who was the apprentice mentor who was managing all the apprentices on the East Coast. So I do think it is important for even to just have a buddy system with new people in general. So then they have someone that they can go to consistently. Um, just someone to be like, hey, this is different to my last workplace, or what's going on here? How do I do that?
Mm,
Even if it's not someone that is in that role, especially if it's safe, it's a fleet with only a small team of people in the workshop, that buddy can be someone who is not in that same role, but just getting to know the business as well, because that can be overwhelming in itself. But even giving the leaders some skills in teaching, being a tradie doesn't mean you've learned how to teach apprentices. And I think that's something that I tell a lot of apprentices, that come through and like that reach out to me. Sometimes people can't give you what they need. Like school teachers, they go through years of uni before they're in front of a class. But someone who's just finished an apprenticeship, who's kind of done the hard slog themselves, they haven't been taught how to then communicate effectively how to do what they are now doing.
mm.
So sometimes they're not at any fault of their own. Some people don't want to actively teach other people. That's one thing. But some people who do want to teach, they haven't been taught how to teach,
Or
and
they're
it
doing
takes
what
them.
the way they were taught or the way they were trained, which may not be the best way either.
Yeah, there is seems to be a scheme of, I call it bully teaching,
Yeah.
where people are pretty much belittled when they do something wrong, so then they remember not to do something wrong. And I feel like it gets mixed up with accountability.
Mm,
Um, I think in that teaching, when people make mistakes, accountability, shaming, and bullying can kind of become a bit blended.
mm,
Um, and accountability is like owning up for it, acknowledging that you've done it, but then often people who haven't been taught how to teach properly or have been taught this way, they add that shame on there. Make sure you remember it. I'm going to tell you about this all the time.
mm, mm.
Um, and it can really get under people's skin.
Yeah, it certainly changed. I did my apprenticeship in the late 80s, early 90s, and that was sort of how we got taught. And if I'm honest, I've sort of continued that for a long while afterwards myself because I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about diversity a little bit. Obviously you're a big advocate for it. Like in a workshop and in a workplace, what are the benefits of diversity? And is it simple as ticking a box and hiring some females, or do you have to go further than that to make it actually valuable?
Yeah, I think you definitely need to go further than that to make it valuable. Ticking a box, whether it is ticking like the woman box, the old, the young, the black, the white, going into that kind of thing as well, especially because there's a big uptake as a quota of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, people with disabilities, just bringing kind of minorities in a general just into a workplace. It's not being diverse. If you're bringing them into a workplace and expecting them to act like everyone else, exactly like everyone else, then that defeats the whole purpose. It just like the idea of diversity is to have different ideas and different experiences, different ways of looking at things, and even just taking men, women, race, all that kind of stuff out of it. When I was an apprentice and where I worked first, there was guys that were bodybuilders and there were people that were not, who were quite small like myself, and the bigger guys would ask us smaller people for help as much as we'd ask them for help. They couldn't fit between the fuel tank and the cab, but we could. So it diversity works in so many different ways, and I really like that example. It's one of the most visual examples I have, and it's a real thing that I lived multiple times through my apprenticeship, through my time as a mechanic. Is I could fit in those really tiny spaces, and
You've
they
got the
most
small
definitely could
hands.
not.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, okay. And like, so, because you're dealing with it and talking with it and obviously promoting it every day, you would see the advantages of businesses, that the light bulb moment when people realize that having diverse thoughts actually adds value to the business?
Yeah, that's it. I've had some organizations where they've taken on their first female apprentice or female like employee kind of a bit begrudgingly, but then after a year or two they're like, "Awesome, we only want women."
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, people's minds change, but yeah, the diversity, it everyone has something to offer.
Yeah. So for people running workshops today, there's a lot of talk about the skill shortage, about trying to find people, and I sort of believe people have got to invest and grow their own, is the phrase that I use.
Mhm.
Well, what tips have you got for people running workshops and how they can grow their own, how they can bring in diverse people in and train them? What should they be doing?
Yeah, even going to growing their own. I think we touched on it a little bit before where, not all tradespeople are automatically teachers.
Mm.
Not all good tradespeople are automatically good at running and leading other tradespeople as well. So that's a really easy one. If you want people to step up into leadership roles, give them some type of leadership training. There are 1-2 day courses up to qualifications in leadership. Really being able to give them the skills for the jobs that you want them to take in the future is a really good way to grow their own. When people are coming in, like apprentices, you can give them a pathway to kind of be like, cool, 3 months in, we want you to be able to service a vehicle on your own. And then, 6 months in, we want you to be able to do this. We want you to be able to rewire is a bit intense for 3 months, like 6 months in. But, depending on the workshop and the scheme of work, what your most common tasks are, it's really easy one easy thing you can do is kind of make those milestones so then people know if they are meeting the milestones. In any role, if you are expected to improve, but you don't know what you're improving to, then it can be really hard to know if you're on the right direction. And it's really hard for someone to be able to say, hey, yeah, you're doing a good job, because no one really knows what the target is.
Yeah, okay. So it comes back to having a plan or having a process, that not just, sort of telling them to sweep the floor for the first 6 months of their job or something like that.
Yeah, that's it. And
Yeah.
even having those shitty, like those crappy jobs, having them like divided evenly through the workshop. Depending on the size of the workshop, like where I did my apprenticeship at Cummins, there was 5 apprentices. So there was some jobs like being in the wash bay and keeping the wash bay clean. So then when people come in, they were actually making their trucks cleaner and not more dirty. Um, Someone needed to be in there for at least half of every day. With 5 apprentices, we had a roster And, we just did it one day a week each. So it was spread between us. If you do have a smaller workshop, then maybe that's spread over your whole cohort of apprentices or even just all the tradespeople as well. So yes, maybe the apprentice is doing the majority of the cleaning, but they're not doing all of it. They still have time to actually learn technically.
Mm. So maybe just to finish off, yeah, because you're actually teaching today, what are some of the change? Has it changed much from when you did your time? Like, has technology changed things? It's obviously there's more electrical stuff, more computers and everything. Has the job changed these days compared to when you started?
Yeah, slightly. I wouldn't say it's changed completely, but yes, a lot more interaction with technology. When we're kind of leaning more into systems like lane change assist and kind of those guidance systems going on from there, leading into like self-driving vehicles, which we're not there in Australia, but we do have systems adding on that are leading us that way. Yep, they are other systems that we need to learn that interact with our steering, with our braking systems, that we need to learn those interactions. But with me, like, and in the road transport industry, and I also cross over into mobile plant mining and construction, all of the old gear is still running.
Right.
So we need to know all of that as well as the new stuff, which means that the possibilities for learning are endless, which is something that we can use for or against ourselves. We can use it against ourselves, being like, oh my God, I don't know everything. And for ourselves, as in, like, there's always something to learn. It's always going to be exciting. It's going to be ever changing. In the industry, working in the mechanical space, like, you're never going to know everything. There's always going to be a brand inventing something new. There's always going to be something old that pops up that you haven't seen, and it keeps it really interesting.
Mm. And that's probably like I do hear from some workshops that they might have a light vehicle mechanic and they have not heavy vehicle, but if you're open to learning the new things, there's no reason why you can't do both, and you can't do plant equipment. Obviously, there's some stuff
Mhm.
you kind of need to know about, but you can learn it and you can grow as a mechanic. Like a mechanic, you're not the same mechanic when you start, or technician,
Yeah.
when you finish your apprenticeship, you do develop over time, don't you?
Yeah, that's it. And even like jumping from workplace to workplace, so even going from as simple as going from like Ford to Mazda in the car world, like, they do things slightly differently. There is new things to pick up, going from cars to trucks. Like, there are things to pick up, but you're not starting from scratch. Once you have that mechanical knowledge, you've always got those base skills that, it can be challenging to learn something, but you're not learning from the very beginning.
Oh, fantastic. Louise, it's been a fantastic chat. Thank you very much for sharing.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Mark.
Yeah. All right. So that's it for today's episode of the Fleet News Group podcast. A huge thank you to Louise for sharing her story and some practical advice for fleet managers and workshop leaders. If you enjoyed this discussion, make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes. And we've got 3 years. We're in our 4th year now, so there's lots of episodes you can go back and listen to. So if you're a fleet nerd like me, there's lots of great stories. And remember, there's always more stories on our websites every day. Fleet Auto News, Fleet EV News, Fleet HV News, and our quarterly magazine, All Things Fleet. So look out for them, sign up for the newsletter. Thanks for listening, and yeah, I'll catch you next time.